Hi, welcome to the Autism Out Loud podcast. I am your host, Lorin Monèe. This is episode 1 of 1, titled The Blueprint. I just wanted to tell you a little bit about my journey and how I got here as an autism mom or a mother to children with special needs. So I have 4 children, 3 of which are my biological children, 1 of which is my bonus baby. My oldest daughter, Charlie, I had at 23. Normal pregnancy, born exactly on her due date. I had an epidural. She hit her milestones early. I breastfed her for about 6 months. Then she drank Similac. Then we switched her to organic cow milk. She ate jarred baby food, drank a lot of water. She was potty trained early, knew how to write her name, count to 10, recognized all her ABCs all before she was 4. So everything was wonderful with Charlie. When Charlie was about 2 or 3, I had a miscarriage. I got pregnant again, and then I had a miscarriage. After that, I want to say like a year after that, I got pregnant again, and my son Eli was born July 2018. So Eli was my introduction to becoming a special needs mom. When I was pregnant with him, I was so sick. I went from 145 pounds down to like 115, 120, super thin. But I was healthy. I didn't have any complications. My skin got all bright. I didn't have any energy, but I was healthy. I just couldn't eat. And now that I'm thinking about it, that was probably Eli's way of keeping his toxic level down, because I was just eating whatever I want. I didn't eat fast food, Chinese food, or pork, but outside of that, I ate whatever I wanted. So I think that was his way of keeping his toxic level down. But anyway, when I was about 2 months pregnant, I caught the flu from my oldest daughter, Charlie. I went to the hospital, and I took an antibiotic or a medication called Tamiflu. Definitely regret that. But fast forwarding, Eli was born normal, vaginally, natural, no epidural, because he came out so fast. I was about 39 weeks pregnant. It was an extremely quick and painful process. I went into labor at like 7 something. Eli came like 11 something. So that's 4 hours from the total labor and contractions to him coming out. And for anyone who has a baby, no, it can be a long process. So 4 hours is not a long time. It was a very painful experience. I didn't want any more kids after that experience, even though I had one more. But anyway, I had him. He got his Hep B shot in the hospital. He got circumcised in the hospital. I was so out of it by the time they put him on my chest and he cried. I don't really remember too much after that. But I do know when we got home, he was so traumatized from the circumcision, I'm assuming, because it was World War III trying to change his pamper for 2 weeks straight. Crying to the top of his lungs. He did not want me touching him at all. I guess he was like, lady, you let these people snippety snip. You can't be trusted to stay out my stuff. That's how I felt he was, because it was really World War III trying to change his butt for them 2 weeks. But after that, smooth sailing. The difference with Eli and Charlie, when it was time to have him vaccinated, I had the strongest urge not to. And he was like 1 month, but the urge was so strong, I started seeking advice from the people closest to me, my support system. My mom works in a hospital, my grandmother, we're all very in tune with healthcare. We all have insurance, go to doctors, we follow our vaccine schedule. So, when I brought it up, the idea was completely shunned. They told me that that's not a good idea. I need to protect him and make sure that his health is top tier. My grandmother's favorite line is, God gave us doctors. And, it just wasn't a good idea. So everyone except my mother-in-law, She was the only one that told me to just pray about the decision, and whatever God tells you to do, that's what you do. So it was a lot of noise in my head, a lot of fear, a lot of egos that I had to silence to get peace. And I prayed to God, and I feel like he gave me clear instruction on what to do. Okay? I'm not going to tell you what it was. But I will say, my upcoming doctor's appointments, I decided that I was going to hold off with the vaccines. Not necessarily not have him vaccinated at all, but just to hold off. And she was so against that decision. She threatened to get my insurance cut off. She incorporated God and religion in it, talking about disparities in her country. I believe she's from India, and all the diseases that exist in third world countries and the lack of resources, and how I was not taking advantage of the resources for my son to keep him safe. It was a lot. And I didn't realize, but at the time she was manipulating and abusing my emotional and mental state because I was vulnerable. I was exhausted. I had Eli, just had a baby, just lost my vehicle. Life was lifing, right? So I went against my intuition and my peace and listened to her. And I remember her always saying to me, vaccines do not cause autism. And I will leave that for another episode. We're not even talking about that. But yeah, I was exhausted. I was breastfeeding. I was feeding him every 2 hours. I wasn't getting no sleep. I still had to cook. I still had to clean. I was drained, and take my 4-year-old to school, do her homework. Whew. Anyway, long story short, I went against my intuition and got him completely vaccinated. And I was so out of tune, I didn't even realize that she didn't even follow the CDC schedule. She gave him his MMR early because he wasn't even 2. He had an extra dose of Hep B. And all these things were happening in such a short period of time. I didn't even realize that in this time frame, he was like going into space. He stopped responding to his name. He stopped eating the foods that he liked. Eli was always very picky. He used to eat like beans and spaghetti and mac and cheese, rice, chicken. He just didn't want to eat. He became so zoned out. Nothing could really catch his attention besides Sesame Street and super simple songs, things that he would watch before he started going into space would bring him a little bit back into reality, of what I like to call the sunken place. It was a slow regression, but it was definitely noticeable. And I just tried to convince myself that I was bugging out, or, every kid develops at their own time and maybe I'm just being paranoid. But after a while, it was hard to feed him anything outside of chicken nuggets, French fries, pizza, and him drinking his almond milk and his water. And still to this day, he doesn't drink anything but water and his almond milk. He still doesn't even drink juice. But he started lining up his toys. He wasn't answering to his name. He lost his language. He started banging things over and over again. Thankfully, it wasn't his head or himself. He wasn't having that type of self-injurious behavior. However, he started eloping. And for those of you who don't know what eloping is, if you're outside and your child just starts running and you're calling their name and they keep running, and you're going to have to stop, drop, and roll and go get them because they might run out the park or just run anywhere. It's very scary. But he started eloping. So all of these things happening was very stressful for me, and even more so because I knew and I had a plan on not to do a thing, but I still did a thing. And now I'm seeing the consequence of it. So because of all of these things, I didn't immediately seek evaluation. I didn't talk to anybody about it. I left it to myself, and I just said, it's something he's going to grow out of, right? And this was all dandy until the pandemic hit, COVID-19, and my husband lost his job. Now, normally my husband is out 5 a.m. He's not back till 6 p.m. He works, right? So him being home, now he's noticing a lot that he wouldn't normally notice. So he asked me, do you think it's something going on with Eli? Do you think it's something going on with our son? And immediately I'm like, no, he's fine. You know, all kids grow at their own pace. I'm still holding on to who my son was before he started exhibiting these behaviors, knowing that everything is not all wrong, because I can feel it. But I didn't want to acknowledge it because I didn't want to acknowledge the guilt I had, and I didn't want to acknowledge the pain and the weight of the what if something is going on with our son. First time my husband asked me, I dismissed it, assured him everything was fine. But then he asked me again. I did the same thing. And at this point, I'm a little offensive, defensive. You know, I'm on defense at this point. And he had to really break it down to me like, I know you know something is going on with him. And he was like, and it's okay if it is, but we need to know so we can help him. And at that point, the tears started rolling. I was boo-hooing, crying. Told him he was right. You know, I did see an emerge of behaviors come about that was not there before. He lost his language. He was not trying to potty train anymore. It was literally like he slowly went into space. And because it was so slow, it wasn't a regression like a light switch, like, oh, you wake up and it's a completely different kid. It's a slow steer of, oh, he's not answering to his name anymore. They call it regression. So it's like, okay, let me get his ears checked. Let me make sure he can hear. Let me make sure it's not something going on with his hearing. It was rough. A big step backwards. And at this point, before he turned 2, I said, let me contact early intervention in my county. I'm in New York City. And I followed the process. The process was very straightforward. It was in the middle of COVID, so I had all of his evaluations, speech evaluation, psychological evaluation, on Zoom. A lot of phone calls, a lot of people I had to be in contact. But the last step was about this 20-minute Zoom call. And it was a few people on the line. I think it was like a psychologist, a behavioral analyst, an ABA person, and it was someone else. I can't remember. It was three women on the call. And I remember one of the women, I remember her going, we were in a room at this point. They're prompting me to, just me and my son are in a room. We're on Zoom. They're wherever they are. And they're prompting me to like, try to play with him, get him to engage in imaginative play, get him to answer to his name. And I remember at one point he was lining up toys. And I didn't know at this point that lining up toys was a characteristic or a behavior that associate children with special needs or autism. So he started lining up his toys. And one of the women on the line was like, oh my God, he's lining up his toys. I'm aggravated because I already don't want to be going through this process. And I'm like, why are we focused on him lining up toys when I'm trying to figure out what's going on? But after that 20-minute call, they told me that my son was on the spectrum. I didn't get a level, but that was how basically I received my diagnosis. And I cried. Soon as we got off that phone, I was just boohoo crying. I know my aunt had called me like 2 minutes later, so I answered the phone as I'm boohooing, and I'm telling her what happened, and she's telling me like, it's okay, you know, you're not alone. A lot of parents go through this. A lot of families go through this. It's okay. Things will get better. You just got to get him the help he needs. You're doing a good job. You're taking the right steps. You just got to get, you know, the help that he needs. And at that point for me, I completely went in the dark. I felt like everything was my fault. I felt like it was just a really dark, sunken place for me as well. But that was the beginning of the journey of me becoming a special needs mom. Do I think vaccines cause autism? We could really dive into that in the next episode because it is a complex answer. But what I do know for sure is that wherever you are on your journey, however this happened to you, whether you were relieved, whether you feel alone, whether you are shocked, whether you are happy, whether you are depressed, I just want you to know that you are not alone. Don't forget to subscribe to the community. If this resonated with you, follow us on Instagram, Facebook. Check out our blog, autismoutloud.com. And I'll see you in the next episode. If you want to talk about, do vaccines cause autism? Mamas, papas, you are not alone.